Who are you?
Wake up today in hospital. I wake up and I'm hallucinating.
I've got some bad news.
They're infected.
Infected!
Father.
Infected with what?
Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
The blood. There's something in the blood.
Lesson 1. You never go anywhere alone unless you've got no choice.
Hello?
Lesson 2. Only travel during daylight unless you've got no choice.
See, this is a really shit idea. You know why? It's obviously a shit idea.
We have to leave now. More will be coming.
They always do.
They're dead. And you're gonna be next.
How's it going, folks? You alright? This is Steve, The Noise. I'm back for another edition of Horror Noise. Thank you for sticking with me, and thank you for all your suggestions and all your love. Love you guys. Thank you very much. So, not on top form today. I don't know, feeling a little bit bleh. So, bear with me if I don't have my usual same energy. But I put a poll out on the Facebook group, on my Horror Noise Facebook group, and put it out there yesterday, just asking people what they would like me to do, and 28 days later, won. So here I am, thanks to you lovely folks. So 28 days later, another classic. Okay, this is the multi-film sort of version. So I had 28 days and 28 weeks later, but I'm just doing 28 days later today. So let's do it. So 28 days later, 2002 British horror. British. So I know I keep getting a bit excited about British horrors, but we don't have many. So give us that, at least America. And so the film was directed by Danny Boyle, who's basically directing royalty in this country. He done Trainspotting. If you American folks haven't seen that, brace yourself. Just talking about Scottish life and partying and drug use. It's very raw, very gritty, which is transpired into this film. Very raw, very gritty. But it's also done Trainspotting, Slumdog Millionaire, 127 Hours, The Beach, Shallow Grave, Sunshine, and many more. He is, like I said, royalty. He is, to have someone of that caliber, a director of that esteem, to delve into the horror industry. We're blessed. We're very much blessed. What an absolutely amazing director. He even got involved with the opening ceremony at the Olympics, and he directed like this big opening ceremony using like the NHS, and it was just beautiful. He's an absolutely fantastic director and just has unbelievable like vision. The way that he portrays what he wants onto cinema is just breathtaking. So onto the film. I'm going to do no spoilers, and then obviously spoilers, but starting off with the sort of making of this film. They closed down half of London to make this film. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to some of my American followers here, but to have a horror film basically shut down half of London is completely unheard of. As you're probably aware, London is one of the biggest cities in the world, and I can't remember in my lifetime there ever being a film of this size that just managed to absolutely shut down London and, you know, perform and you know, shoot all of these epic scenes. Admittedly, they did it on a Sunday, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. But still, they shut down places like, you know, Westminster, Houses of Parliament, Leicester Square, Trafalgar Square. So when you see the character Jim, when he wakes up in the hospital, and he's just sort of roaming around London, and it's completely dead, and there's no one there. Obviously, you know, it's 2002. They could have used CGI, but this is not. This is all practical effects. This is all filmed on location, no green screen. So I don't know, some of my American audience may take that for granted. Maybe, you know, some of their films growing up, that might be the norm, just to shut down parts of certain cities. But in over here in the UK, completely unheard of. It just gave you goosebumps when you watched it. You know, seeing all these London icons, these iconic sort of monuments and buildings and statues, just no one there, when it's usually absolutely rammed. So that was something that that was very striking from the off. Even in the trailers when it first came out, when you saw that, it was just like, yeah, this is the real deal. You have to see this. So this film gets a bit of a debate with people in the horror community that say, is it a zombie film? Is it not? I think I touched on it in Dawn of the Dead remake review that I did. I class this as not a zombie film, simply because you see it in the opening scene in the laboratory. It's a rage virus that they were experimenting on animals, a bit like sort of Clockwork Orange. They were subjecting these animals to unbelievable sort of torture and pain, and showing them, like, you know, monkeys, showing them videos and visionary of just wars and horrible nastiness, to just try and breed up some kind of hate and just pure rage inside these animals. Why exactly they were doing this, I have no fucking idea. But of course, all hell breaks loose because these animals get loose, and this virus is actually transmittable, and that's where all of this comes out. But Danny Boyle's movie making, his style, like I mentioned, is very raw, very gritty. The camera work that they use in this film, just, I don't know, it brings a sort of, it grabs you intensely, and it makes you feel like you're almost there. It's not quite found footage style, but when they're running around and the camera's shaking so much, it breeds a sort of anxiety to the viewer. That's what I found anyway. It's like I said, it's not found footage, but it's the closest you'll get to, you know, a big budget film that is using this sort of shaky camera work. It is something that's been used in a few sort of English films, so I don't know if it's an English or a British trait, but I think that the camera work was just scary as fuck. It just made it so much more brutal, and you saw it through the eyes of the rage, one of the infected as well. Like, you see it numerous times whenever they're running, you see it through their eyes and the camera's shaking, and it just breeds the anxiety and the dread that's coming, you know. A special shout out has to go to the soundtrack to this film. I had a quick beef up on my knowledge. I was flicking through the film earlier to certain scenes, and just the iconic music in it, and just the somber tones of this music that they use. It just, oh my god, it's just beautifully bleak. It really adds to the tension. I remember when I first watched it, they used the "Come Bide With Me," the FA Cup sort of final song, and they just use it so eerily beautiful in such a somber and horrible moment, or horrible film, and they just use these iconic and really quite sad but beautiful pieces of music. I just think it goes side by side. It was just, yeah, so well placed. So a special shout out to the soundtrack to this. So this is the non-spoilers part. I'll go into a little bit of the film now, synopsis. So the lab scene we've touched on. So the characters in this film, we have Jim, who's played by Cillian Murphy. From what I researched, this was his debut film. I think he was in TV shows before, but he was unbelievably good. My God, his performance in this. You know, he starts out as just like this courier who was in like a sort of bike crash and then wakes up in hospital. Very similar to what's his name from The Walking Dead, the sheriff. That scene, you know, where he wakes up in the hospital and he's woken up to a post-apocalyptic nightmare. Exactly the same with this Jim character played by Cillian Murphy. We have a character called Selena, played by Naomi Harris. She's gone on to do some amazing things in Hollywood. You've got Frank, who's played by Brendan Gleeson. He's a sort of English, quite little English sort of hidden gem. You've got his daughter Hannah, who's played by Megan Burns, and Major Henry West, who's played by Christopher Eccleston. But there's a lot of familiar faces in this film, but they're just the sort of the main cast. So once Jim wakes up in post-apocalyptic London, trying to find his feet and screaming around, you saw it in the trailer, walking around shouting hello, hello. He has this scene where he goes back to his sort of home where his mum and dad live, but just around the corner there's a church, and he tries to go and see if the father, the priest, is there. And when he goes in there, there's all these rage virus, I was going to say zombies there, but they're these infected people, and they're all just sort of sleeping and just like just sitting there. And the minute he shouts hello, they all fucking jump up, and he sees his priest, the sort of family priest, the family father, and he tries to obviously go for him, and he manages to get away. So he stumbles across this group of stragglers, these people who are basically desperately trying to stay alive. Selena is the sort of the leader of this little group of people, and they spend obviously the rest of the film just trying to forage and find food and just basically trying to keep alive during this horrible sort of pandemic. It's funny when you say the word pandemic now in 2020 and we're all in lockdown, and then you see that pandemic, it's like it could be a lot worse. It could be so much worse. You know, I'm obviously a massive horror fan, love my heavy metal. I've got quite a few tattoos of sort of, you know, look, Biohazard and End of the World and stuff. So I've been quite fascinated with that side of it, and just, you know, the end of the world and apocalypse, how it would look. And we had a taste of it a little bit in 2020, and I'm a bit like, I was only joking, can we go back? But yeah, it could be so much worse, like in this film. So obviously the group are going around and trying to forage and basically stay alive, and they get obviously ambushed quite a few times along the way, and they see a tower block, and it has like Christmas lights up. It's almost like a beacon. So they believe that there's obviously people there, and they go to try and, you know, save them, and it's literally just a father and a daughter who were just held up there. And they straight away sort of forge a nice sort of relationship. I must admit, my biggest problem with this film is the actor who plays Hannah. That's the daughter of the father, Frank. She's only a child actress in this. I think she must be about 15, 16. But she's up there with one of the worst child performances I've ever seen. She was so bad. She was robotic. She looked like she was just reading off a fucking auto cue the whole time. She's talking like this. Yeah. Her performance could have easily ruined the film, but luckily we had people like Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris to save the day. But whoever cast her, have a word with yourself. So the film sort of get into the sort of final third act, and they receive almost like a call on the radio, like a distress call, basically telling them, you know, this the British Army, we're held up somewhere just outside London. I don't know, I think it might be somewhere like Milton Keynes or something. We have a sort of, we've built up our own fort, our own little community here. We can protect you, get to us, and, you know, we can ride this out. And they make their way up there, and let's just say that this army guys, their intentions are not, they're not good for the group. They had a good dynamic in it, because obviously this is all a post-apocalyptic, and you know, it's all about the rage virus and these infected people. But when they see these army guys, it shows you just how fucking abhorrent the human race can be. A bit like, you know, with Walking Dead and a few of these other, you know, zombie post-apocalyptic, you know, Mad Max. Sometimes it's not the infected or the virus you have to worry about, it's fellow human beings, and that's exactly what happens when it gets to that. But anyway, can't go on much more. That's about as far as I can get with non-spoilers. This film has been out since 2002, so if you haven't seen it and you're a horror fan and you're watching this, what the fuck are you doing? Sort it out. But yeah, 28 Days Later, British horror film. I'm going to give it a 8.5. It was fantastic, thoroughly enjoyable, really gritty, really horrible, really bleak. The British sort of style, filming style, there's not much hope or happiness that goes into these things. You know, I question the American horrors quite a lot recently. Sometimes maybe a little bit unfairly, but this reminds me a lot of the foreign horrors I've been watching recently. Very bleak, very dark, and if you're squeamish, or if you want something with a happy ending, you kind of get a sort of happy ending in this. But yeah, anyway, it's probably not the film for you. It's quite depressing and quite dark. But yeah, 8.5. Absolutely love it. English classic, fantastic. And some say that this actually revived the the zombie genre after this film. It all went a bit stale. So after this came out, then we had Dawn of the Dead, and then obviously Walking Dead came out, and then there's been loads of others, The Crazies, and etc. So I think 28 Days Later actually breathed new life back into the zombie genre. So I think you can thank this film for some of the recent epics that we've had. So right, on to non-spoilers. On to spoilers. Told you I wasn't feeling great today. I don't know what's up, mate. Anyway, you have 5 seconds. I'm now going into spoilers. If you haven't seen this film, turn off now. Okay. Spoilers. Let's do it. So, after the opening initial scene with the, you know, the laboratory, and then you're seeing Jim clambering, trying to find people alive. Obviously, befriends his group. And Selina's character befriends him, but she's very cold and very sort of, you know, dismissive of him. He's obviously struggling to, you know, keep his sanity at this point. Probably knows that his family are dead. He can't quite understand what's going on, and she's very just like, you know, fucking man up, sort it out. This is the situation we're in. This is the reality. Like, fucking sort it out. Very cold and very brutal. And then you see what she's capable of. They go to, Jim is basically desperate to go and see his mum and dad, see if they're still alive, and she's just like, look, they're dead. And he's just like, look, I'm not coming with you, I'm going to go and find them. So he manages to talk them into going to the family home, and they see the mum and dad's there on the bed, either killed themselves or starved to death. And it was quite a somber, morbid moment. And it's getting dark, so they manage to, well, they just decide to sleep in Jim's parents' house in the sitting room, and they end up getting ambushed by the infected, and they jump in through the window. They fight him off, but Selina has like a boyfriend there, and he gets like the tiniest little scratch or bite on his arm, and Serena just looks at him, and he's just like, no, I'm fine, and she just fucking hacks him down with a machete. You're like, wow, don't mess with this bitch. Whew! So what I was saying again about the grittiness and the raw and the horrible sort of tone of this film, it was drummed through, not off, by that scene. Horrible. And then you see obviously Jim starting to evolve a little bit. He was very vulnerable and very sort of, you know, not prepared for this. But after, say, maybe a couple of weeks of hanging around with these guys, they're travelling in a car and they stop off at a petrol station, and he's looking for a burger or something. I remember him saying, like, I want a cheeseburger, and they're just like, are you sure that's a good idea? He's like, fuck it, I'm going, and goes to check it out. And a bit like my 30 Days of Night review, that Taboo Don't Kill Kids. Yeah. I don't even know why I'm saying the Taboo. It seems like quite a lot of the films I watch, they just fucking happily hack up kids. Doesn't look like there's a Taboo left, but finds a couple of dead bodies and ends up kicking like a pan or something, and then this kid just comes out of nowhere and again has to hack this kid to death. Again, Danny Boyle's just betrayal in this film, you know, and I say this term in a lot of my films because this is the films I like, but it's Smash Mouth, and it's just like, fucking, yeah. But anyway, there's a couple of little sort of black comedy moments in the film, like you know, they have a good dynamic and they have good chemistry within the group, and I can't remember what it was, but they had to get to somewhere and they were fleeing like the hordes of these infected, and they had to go basically under a tunnel. It's not the Blackwall tunnel, it was way too short for that, but it was some kind of tunnel in London. It might be near the Strand, there's a tunnel there. But I just remember like that they were pulling up in the taxi to the right at the opening of the tunnel, and Jim just says, this is a really shit idea. Like, this is a really, really shitty idea. And then of course hordes come and start attacking them, and he just about managed to get away. But I thought that was a nice little moment because, you know, even though it's all really intense and dark and in your face, there was a nice little sort of human comedy element there. So after they find out they hear the message from the army guys, they're obviously travelling up, I think it's like Milton Keynes, and they get to like this sort of blockade, and there's no one there, and so they're investigating, and this crow is chewing on like looks like a dead body, and the crow's eyes are going like blood red. I don't know if you know much about crows, but I don't think they usually feed on dead bodies. I don't think they're scavengers, so that scene was quite upsetting, quite dark. And Frank's character, he's underneath the crow and he tries to shoo it away, and a single drop of blood goes into his eye. Yeah, that's a visually very awesome but very upsetting scene, because then Frank starts to turn in front of his daughter and he's like, get away, get away. And then the army guys turn and just like absolutely assassinate him. Not just like one shot to the head, they just blow him away. They must pump about fucking 50, 60 rounds into him, and then his daughter just has to stand there and look at him die. It was, again, the way I'm describing it, it sounds very morbid, and it is. It's a very morbid film. Just how we like it, eh? So the hideous army, I touched on it obviously before. They bring the group back to this big manor house in the middle of the countryside, and again they've got a big fort, so they've locked it down with barbed wires and booby traps and bombs, and they've got all of this fucking weaponry and lights and everything. So they've built this place up to just be like an absolute fort. And at first the army are quite accommodating, and you know, they're cooking for them and welcoming them, and then after about, I think it's about a week or so, they're there, you start to realise their true intentions. Yeah, I've got quite a big problem with this kind of aspect in horror films. I Spit on Your Grave, or you know, any kind of films that's heavily involved in rape, and that's basically what these army guys were doing. They were going to off all the male part of the group and just rape the women and use them as sex slaves. Yeah. Danny Boyle, man, what are you doing to me? Fucking hell, I feel like I need counselling after this. But again, like I said earlier, sometimes it's not the virus you have to worry about, it's human nature. And that scene just perfectly embodies what, you know, a lot of human beings would do. Dog eat dog, just turn into absolute scumbags. You know, they always say compassion and love is what separates us between us and the animals. Well, I think there's not much evidence of that in this sort of scene. Brutal. But yeah, so the gang, especially Jim, they get the upper hand on the army. They sort of infiltrate them one by one and take them out. And Jim, at one point, just turns into an absolute psychopath. So we've gone from Jim being alone, scared, almost like a little boy in the middle of Trafalgar Square, to near the end of the film, and he's an absolute fucking animal. And he's jumping on these army guys and pushing his thumbs into their eyes. And oh god, oh, that fucking scene where he puts it in, and you know, the makeup's so good, you can see his thumbs going under his eyelids. Oh god, I mean, it could have easily just shot that and just, you know, moved away, but it didn't. Obviously it's a prosthetic head, well I hope it is, and he just gouges it in. Oh god, fuck, that was so brutal. So yeah, to get the upper hand. And then we have, unfortunately, a very cheesy ending. Everything's great and everything's lovely, and they're walking through some like mountain range, trying to leave messages saying help, help, and a sort of jet comes flying through the valley, sees them, and they're saved. The end. But it's like, saved how? Like, we've seen that this virus is all over the country. It felt like the ending was not from this film. It felt like it was rushed. It felt like it was just out of place, and there was a good reason. The original ending, Jim, when he was obviously taking out a lot of the army guys, he actually got mortally wounded, and Naomi's desperately trying to save him, and she can't, and he ends up dying. And then the film ends, and then you see sort of like shots in between the end credits where the virus has basically gone all over the world. So you're seeing like news reports of people killing each other all over the world. So a little bit like Dawn of the Dead and Brightburn, like this thing is global and it's everywhere. And apparently they showed this to test audiences in America, and apparently the test audiences, again, I've got a massive problem with these test audiences, just like with Event Horizon. What the fuck are you doing? They complained and said it was too bleak, so they changed the ending to they were saved. But it felt so out of place, and it felt like they almost trampled on Danny Boyle's work at the end. It felt just not part of the story. It was so bleak, it was so dark up until then. Suddenly there's this fairy tale ending where they're all saved. You're like, huh? So yeah, that's my only gripe with the theatrical release. There is footage of the original ending on YouTube, so I'd highly recommend checking that out. Watch the film and then just imagine that that's the ending, and it would have been perfect. But yeah. So my only issues is with the character Hannah, the actress in that, Megan Burns. I thought she was awful, and that ending. But apart from that, this is an absolutely world-class film. It's like I said, probably doesn't quite pip The Descent. Probably on par with The Ritual. But I think impact-wise, I think this is probably the biggest British horror film of all time. Even though The Descent and even Eden Lake, you know, they may be seen as better horror films, I don't think an English horror film's ever had this impact. And that's probably down to Frankie Boyle, Danny Boyle. Frankie Boyle's a Scottish comedian. But yeah, fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Sort it out. It's an absolute classic, and it's firmly placed, I'd say, within my top sort of 15-20 horror films of all time. The biggest English horror impact wise of all time, and just a fantastic visual and audio bombardment by Danny Boyle and whoever done the soundtrack. Absolutely fantastic. So 8.5. Right, that's me done. Blabbered on enough, got through it even though I'm not feeling too great. Anyway, like, subscribe, leave me a comment, leave me some love and any recommendations on the Facebook group as well. And I'll see you guys very, very soon. Take care. Much love.